At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
Moderate phase of nationalism meant the time period of freedom struggle when the moderates dominated the Congress policies. They were staunch believers in liberalism and moderate politics.
Moderates were the earlier Congress leaders who believed in peaceful means of agitation. They sent petitions to the government. Moderates were the people who believed in sending request letters to the British government. They were called so because they believe in politics of player.
The most famous moderates were national leaders like Dadabhai Naoroji, Feroz Shah Mehta, D.E. Wacha, W.C. Banerjee, and S.N. Banerjee. Their methodologies included create strong public opinion to arouse consciousness and national spirit, educate and unite people on common political questions, persuade the British government to introduce reforms in India on the lines laid out by the nationalists. Moderates also became somewhat successful in their goals. Indian Council Act of 1892 was passed under their efforts. They were able to sow the seeds of nationalism in the people. Exposure of economic grain policies of British. Opposed child marriage and imposed widowhood.
Limitations of moderates. This phase of national movement excluded the masses and only the educated elites participated in it. They did not demand complete independence from foreign rule. They did not understand the power of a mass movement of people, unlike Gandhi who used this power. Drew most of their ideas from Western political thinking, which further alienated them from the people. International Congress, found by A.O. Hume, formed during the period of Governor-General Lord Dufferin. First session held in Bombay in 1885 under the presidency of W.C. Banerjee. Discussed the problems of all the Indians, irrespective of their religion, caste, language, and regions. Thus, International Congress from the start was an all India secular movement.
The early nationalists also believed that political connections with Britain were in India's interest at that stage of history and that the time was not right for a direct challenge to the British rule. In the opinion of M. N. Roy, it was the golden period of modern Indian history. Though the immediate gains of the moderates were insignificant, their contributions towards political and national awakening was of permanent value to India.
Hence, we can say that the moderates were acting like a safety valve between the masses and the Britishers, but over the time their Indian blood rejuvenated and their leadership urges them to overthrow British by an institutional method.
Cause for the rise of extremism. Failure of the moderates to win any notable success other than the expansion of legislative councils by the Indian Councils Act 1892. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905, in which Japan defeated the European power Russia. These two were the main causes for the rise of extremism.
Immediate cause: reactionary rule of Lord Curzon. Calcutta Corporation Act 1899 reducing the Indian control of this local body. Universities Act 1904 reduced the elected members in the university bodies and reduced the autonomy of the universities and made them government departments. Sedition Act and the Official Secrets Act 1904 reduced the freedoms of people and press. His worst measure was the partition of Bengal 1905.
Partition of Bengal. The first partition of Bengal was a territorial reorganization of the Bengal Presidency implemented by the authorities of the British Raj in 1905. The partition separated the largely Muslim eastern areas from the largely Hindu western areas on 16 October 1905 after being announced on 20 July 1905 by Lord Curzon, the then Viceroy of India.
Partition of Bengal. Partition of Bengal in 1905 provided a spark for the rise of extremism in the Indian national movement. The official reason given for the decision was that Bengal, with a population of 78 million, which is about a quarter of the population of British India, had become too big to be administered.
This was true to some extent, but Curzon's real motives were to break the growing strength of Bengali nationalism, since Bengal was the base of Indian nationalism, to divide the Hindus and Muslims in Bengal, to show the enormous power of the British government in doing whatever it liked.
Declaration of Swaraj and beginning of Swadeshi movement. The Swadeshi movement had its genesis in the anti-partition movement, which was started to oppose the partition of Bengal. The movement included boycott of government schools, colleges, courts, legislative councils, municipalities, government titles, etc. Aggressive nationalists, however, wanted to go beyond a boycott of foreign goods to become a political mass struggle with the goal of attaining Swaraj.
Surat split 1907. The moderate congressmen wanted Swaraj to be achieved through constitutional methods, so they were unhappy. In 1907, a split raised in the Congress at the Surat section due to the moderate extremist dispute over techniques. Extremists came out of the Congress led by Tilak and others.
Swadeshi movement, Vande Mataram movement. Before the Swadeshi movement was launched, petitions, speeches, memoranda, public meetings, and press campaigns were the main form of protest techniques adopted by moderate nationalist leaders. However, the main moderate leaders realized that there was a need for something larger in scope with a different strategy. Vande Mataram became the boycott and Swadeshi movement theme song.
Decline of the Swadeshi movement. The Swadeshi movement was one among the successful pre-Gandhian movements, however, it only lasted till 1911. The movement failed due to the lack of unity among the Hindus and the Muslims. It also lacked an effective organization and party structure.
Government measures. The cry of Vande Mataram was forbidden by government. Restriction of public meetings and suppression of freedom of the press. Schools and colleges were warned not to allow the students to take part in the movement or else their aid would be stopped. Students who were found guilty of participation were to be disqualified for government jobs or for government scholarships, and disciplinary action, fine, expulsion, arrest, beating, etc. was to be taken against them. Extremist leaders Lal Balpal and Aurobindo Ghosh were imprisoned and deported. Formation of the Muslim League. The All India Muslim League, popularized as the Muslim League, was a political party established in 1906 in British India. Its strong advocacy for the establishment of a separate Muslim majority nation state, Pakistan, successfully led to the partition of India in 1947 by the British Empire. Muslim League was formed in Dhaka in December 30, 1906. Nawab Salimullah presided over its session in Dhaka. The founders of the Muslim League were Khwaja Salimullah, Vigarul Mulk, Syed Amir Ali, Syed Nabiullah, Khan Bahadur Ghulam and Mustafa Chowdhury. The first honorary president of the league was Sir Sultan Muhammad Shah, also known as Aga Khan III.
Famous extremist leaders. The early nationalists failed to attain their objectives, giving rise to another group of leaders known as assertive or extremist nationalists. The most prominent leaders of the assertive nationalists were Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Lala Lajpat Rai, and Bipin Chandra Pal, who are known collectively as the Lal Bal Pal trio.
Extremists. Objectives, methods and achievements. The moderates believed that political connections with Britain were in India's interest during that time and that the time wasn't ripe for a direct challenge to British rule. The extremists believed in self-reliance as a weapon against domination. National movement under extremists involved the whole of India. India as a nation-state was beginning to take shape.
Minto-Morley Reforms of 1909. Also known as the Indian Councils Act 1909, it was an act of the Parliament of the United Kingdom. A series of correspondence started between His Excellency Lord Minto and the then Governor-General of India. A committee was appointed by the Government of India to propose a scheme of reforms and introduced separate electorates on the basis of religion. The reforms established the Indian dominance in provincial but not in central and legislative bodies. Despite these reforms, the IN members still reeled over electoral apportionment.
Importance of Lucknow Pact. The Lucknow Pact was seen as a beacon of hope to Hindu-Muslim unity. It led to a growing belief in British India that Home Rule was a real possibility. The meeting at Lucknow brought the two sides together in firm opposition to British imperialism. Lucknow Pact was a great achievement of Hindu and Muslim leaders. It demoralized the government's divide and rule policy.
Terms of Lucknow Pact. The Council of the Secretary of State for India shall be abolished. The Provincial Legislative Council shall have full control over the provincial government. Executive officers in India shall have no judicial powers. The Government of India shall not ordinarily interfere in the local affairs of the province. 4/5 of the members of the Province Legislative Council shall be elected directly by the people. Half of the members of the Viceroy's Executive Council shall be Indians elected by the elected members of the Imperial Legislative Council.
The Indian Home Rule Movement. The Indian Home Rule Movement was a movement in British India. This lasted around 2 years between 1916 to 18 and is believed to have set the stage for the independence movement to the educated English-speaking upper-class Indians. The Home Rule movement was the Indian response to the First World War in a less charged but a more effective way than the response of Indians living abroad. And further in 1921, All India Home Rule League changed its name to SWARAJ Sabha.
The August Declaration of 1917. For the government, the national awakening created by the Home Rule was finding it difficult to cope with the movement and India as united as never before. Under such conditions, the government had to placate the national leaders. On 20th of August 1917, Edwin Montagu, the Secretary of State for India, made an historic announcement. The policy of His Majesty's government, with which the Government of India are in complete accord, is that of increasing the association of Indians in every branch of administration, and the gradual development of self-governing institutions with a view to the progressive realization of responsible government in India as an integral part of the British Empire.
Non-cooperation movement. In the year 1921, M.K. Gandhi launched the non-cooperation movement in India. In the first phase, the Indian people who were awarded by the British government in their field began surrendering their titles of honors. The second stage included the boycott of civil services, congressional assemblies, courts, foreign goods, and schools. In the third stage, it was believed that if the administration practiced suppression, a complete civil disobedience drive would be launched by the nationalist leaders. This movement gained widespread popularity and was spread across the countryside. Jawaharlal Nehru set up the Awadh Kisan Sabha in the villages. As a result of this, the houses of talukdars were attacked and bazaars were looted. In the Gundam hills of Andhra Pradesh, a militant guerrilla movement spread under the leadership of Raju. The non-cooperation movement aimed to challenge the colonial economic and power structure, and British authorities would be forced to take notice of the demands of the independence movement.
The Swaraj Party. With the suspension of the non-cooperation movement and the continued repressive activities of the government, a section of the Congress led by C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru, labelled as pro-changers, decided to contest the elections and to disrupt the working of the legislature from within. C.R. Das resigned from the post of the president of the Congress party and along with Motilal Nehru and others formed a new party within the Congress called Congress Khalifat Swaraj Party, or briefly referred to as the Swaraj Party.
Civil disobedience movement launched by Mahatma Gandhi. First experiment in Champaran district of Bihar. On 12th March 1930 began the March to Sea. Among peasants, to protect against injustice meted out to them. To protect British monopoly on salt, which prohibited Indians from collecting or selling salt, a staple in Indian diet. Importance. It allows individuals to exercise their right to free speech against unfair and unjust government and its laws.
Quit India Movement. The Quit India Movement, also known as the August Movement, was a movement launched at the Bombay session of All India Congress Committee by Mahatma Gandhi on 8 August 1942 during Second World War, demanding an end to British rule in India. Gandhiji gave the slogan "Do or Die" for Quit India Movement. It played a crucial role in India's independence. It kept the Congress party united through their difficult times. The Quit India movement failed because of heavy-handed suppression by government, weak coordination, lack of leadership, and a clear-cut program of action. The Quit India movement ended at midnight of 8th August 1942 at Gowalia Tang Maidan, Bombay.
The Indian National Army. The Indian National Army was an armed force formed by Indian nationalists and Imperial Japan in 1942 in Southeast Asia during World War II. Its aim was to secure Indian independence from British rule. Rash Behari Bose handed over Indian National Army to Subhash Chandra Bose. It was revived under the leadership of Subhash Chandra Bose after his arrival in Southeast Asia in 1943. The army was declared to be the army of Bose Arzi Hukumat-e-Azad Hind. After the INA's initial formation in 1942, there was concern in British Indian Army that further Indian troops would defect. This led to a reporting ban and a propaganda campaign called GIFs to preserve the loyalty of the Sepoy.
Formation of the interim government. On 16 June 1946, the Viceroy issued a statement proposing to set up an interim government of 14 members. The Congress was in a commanding position in the Constituent Assembly and Jinnah was nervous. The Muslim League refused to join the interim government and decided to resort to direct acting for creating Pakistan. Acceptance of partition of India. Approved new plan by Viceroy. Small India with strong center is more powerful. Choice of partition. Constant battles. Delay in transfer of power leads to civil war. Rulers claim freedom. Bengal, Punjab partitioned. But East Bengal, West Punjab, Sindh, Balochistan, Sylhet and NWFP voted to Pakistan.
Conclusion. 14th August 1947, the Constituent Assembly of Indian Union met in Delhi. India was divided into two independent dominions from 15th August 1947. New cabinet headed by Nehru as Prime Minister was sworn at midnight of 15th August 1947. C. Rajagopalachari, first Indian Governor General. Constitution Assembly became Parliament of India under provisions of new constitution until first general elections. 26 January 1950, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, first President of Indian Republic.
Jai